This is Jeff Arbuckle.
This is Jason Oliver.
And Jason, do you know what it is that people can catch every Wednesday, each and every week?
It's not another stupid movie podcast, is it?
It's exactly another stupid movie podcast.
Oh, shoot!
You can listen to new episodes of Film Seizure every Wednesday morning starring me.
And me!
And we just sit around and talk about movies. Sometimes they're good movies. Sometimes they're bad movies. Sometimes they're someplace in between. I don't know.
Gross, ugly, delicious, funny.
All those things.
All those things.
So every Wednesday, go to filmseizure.com. You might be there right now listening to this episode that's about to start. But you can also find us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram at Film Seizure. So let's get started with a new episode.
Enjoy the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Film Seizure. Thanks for tuning in and listening to Jeff and I again this week. I'm Jason Oliver.
I'm Jeff Arbuckle.
And this week we have for you the 1994 film.
It's weird because it came out in 95, but all of the copyright reference material says 94.
Yeah, and I don't think I saw it on video until summer 96, maybe?
I'm pretty sure I saw it. I know I saw it when I was a senior in high school. I'm pretty sure it was right in the middle spring, maybe March or April of 95.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure because it seems like there was a period in time. So the movie is In the Mouth of Madness. Did we mention that?
Yeah, we didn't. No.
Okay.
All right, so it was released February 3rd, 1995. Yes.
Okay.
The movie is John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness. Sorry about that.
Yeah, because I remember a time when in senior year, me and a couple of my buddies, we were just like, let's go check out some flicks. You know, it's like it's fucking boring. And, you know, you kind of get into that senior second semester, like, lull where, like, you front-loaded everything, and now you're just goofing off now and that whole time. So this was one that we saw, and one of the Brady Bunch movies was the other one.
Weird.
Yeah, and it was just like, yeah, fuck it. We got nothing to do. Let's go see a movie.
This movie came out the year I moved from Charleston, West Virginia to Indianapolis.
Okay.
More specifically to Greenwood, Indiana.
Okay.
Yeah, that came out that February. I moved here that summer. Yeah.
And this is kind of the true untold story of Breitbart.
Yeah.
How people's writings can have an effect on the unstable.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's a really good take, I think.
And leaning heavily on that objectivism too.
Yeah, well, it's sort of like it's an objectivism versus determinism philosophy, and both of those philosophies are honestly kind of pretty bleak, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So nothing really wins here. It's a really dark movie.
Yeah, this is, but it's fun.
Yeah.
All the way through.
It really is.
This is another John Carpenter stab at extra-dimensional Lovecraftian
type of horror
stuff. Yeah. And a pretty good stab at pop horror of like Stephen King. What's the other guy? Dean Koontz. That type of pop horror, pop thriller.
Yeah, sure.
You know, talking about because you have people who are like, like big time readers, gobble every piece of it up. I'm sitting with one here.
Yeah.
And then you have people like me. It's like, meh, movie. I'll watch the movie, or nah, I don't really care to read.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of taken jabs at so many things. To be honest, like there's the idea that reading horror novels or playing violent video games or or listening to heavy metal is going to somehow like turn you into a psychotic, that make you go psychotic and
Right.
and kill, right? It's playing on that to the absurd, right? It's playing on, like you said, the just fandom in general,
Yeah.
and how rabid that can get. Yeah, and then it's got all these political and philosophical undertones, and then there's the whole Lovecraftian element.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So let's. Yeah.
There's
so
a lot to get into
there's
there.
There's a lot to sink our teeth into. I want to take a few steps back. So a couple of weeks ago, we watched Halloween 78 and 2018.
Yes.
And we talked about that. And of course, you can't talk about Halloween without talking about John Carpenter.
Right.
Knowing that we were going to primarily lean on Halloween as opposed to John Carpenter's career or John Carpenter's ability as a filmmaker, we thought, well, we'll just talk about it here because Halloween seems to almost exist beyond John Carpenter now. It's almost like it's like saying that it's like the old argument of how much can George Lucas change of Star Wars before he has to let it exist to the public, be part of the cultural zeitgeist.
Right.
And Halloween, I think, has kind of gone beyond that.
Yeah, and we've already talked about all of this.
We've already talked about that. So now let's talk about John Carpenter, because there's one thing that I think John Carpenter can be very, very good at. Sometimes he isn't, but sometimes he is, and that is kind of predicting future.
Yeah.
So you talked about like how he was kind of talking about fandom. If we also look at some of his other movies in like with Escape from New York, how the scare of rising crime rates, and the to meet the rising crime rates, you have to become more authoritarian.
Yeah, it's an overcorrection.
It's an overcorrection, and it's jailing people through not necessarily overly conservative ideology, but certainly with authoritarianism.
Yeah.
Whereas Escape from L.A. goes uber conservative into religion as a political party now, which 20 years later you certainly see that play in on the far right, to a certain extent, sometimes on the far left too. There's a, I don't want to call it a religion, but there's a certain ideology on the far left that plays to almost a religious idea.
Yeah.
The religious idea of whatever makes you feel like a better person. I mean,
sure.
But both sides have that problem. Escape from LA primarily focuses on the conservative side of it, the overly religious. God spoke to me to take command, and I am now lifetime president. Uncle Ben, you monster!
Right? Yeah.
Uncle Ben from the original Spider-Man trilogy. Yeah. So it's a. He's very good at predicting stuff like that.
Well, I mean, just look at They Live.
Exactly.
Right? I mean,
consumerism
and just a sense of like an authoritative force that is manipulating you, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean that was light years ahead of its time, and it's a goofy movie, but it's telling you something. It's warning you about something serious,
right?
Yeah.
And this one you can kind of say, okay, well, pop culture fandom. Again, 20 years on, people have become less an individual and more of their fandom, which I think is kind of killing it. Man, it's killing the idea of being a fan of something.
Well,
because you don't want to be lumped into the crazy Sutter Cane fandom. Yeah.
What happens is you have two things, right? You have it's a death of criticism.
Yes.
Because what you end up with you end up with a section of fans who are so loyal that the creator of this thing can do no wrong, even if what they're writing is just vapid and awful, right? And I know there's subjectivism to that, but still they will not look at at the work of this person in any way other than glowingly positive. And then you have the people within that group who maybe used to like it, or who just don't like the rabid fans who attack it with almost equal vigor on the other side of things.
Right.
But neither one of them can actually communicate logically or rationally why they feel the way they feel. It's just
they just continue.
It's just a bunch of noise.
It's a continual loop of also consuming it too.
Right. Yes. And we've talked about this in the past a little bit.
Yeah. But this brings up the idea of what you just said. Brings up the idea of sometimes there's also then there's people then there's the outside group.
Yeah.
The outside group represented here by Charlton Heston and Sam Neill. Of I don't read that gobbledygook. I can't stomach it anyway, or I think it's garbage. Before prejudging it,
but they're also you've almost got two types of those people:
right.
The ones who want to make money on it, and the ones who are just like it's not worth my time.
Right, and it's nothing I'm interested in anyway.
Yeah.
So but it's all here.
Yeah,
and you can see it play out now in real life. No, it's not something where Star Wars is turning people into Lovecraftian fucking Cronenberg monsters.
We need a Lovecraftian Star Wars movie. I'm just gonna put that out there.
Oh yeah, like get a Sarlacc out of here.
Yeah,
but no, we're not talking about it like in the sense of your fandom literally turns you into a monster. Although figuratively, you can make the argument that some people's fandom turns them into less than social beings.
Well, we talked about it a little bit last week with the role of the artist, and,
right.
and sort of like I guess we were talking about how Pink Floyd's The Wall and The Monkey's Head kind of had a little bit of overlap in theme. It's sort of around like the celebrity, and when that celebrity is given a little bit too much credit, they either crumble or they might go over the top with believing they're more than who they are. Right. And that's sort of what we have a little bit here too, is with the writer Sutter Cane, who is realizing he has power.
Right. It's yes. That ends up becoming another trope, I guess, of certain deconstruction of literary myth. And it becoming stories beginning to hold more power,
right?
Therefore, becoming more real.
It's legend, right? It's
right.
It's the more people believe it, the more real it is.
Yes,
yeah.
And this has been deconstructed one way that I'm mostly not a fan of, but I understand where the writer was coming from. This has been done with Superman. In stories before, where it's like Superman becoming the most important central character of a universe, therefore the deconstruction of stories becoming then growing into the myth of Superman and Superman tying everything together. It's an interesting idea. Hated the story, but that's beside the point.
But you see this in everything.
Exactly.
You see this idea of a story that's being passed down and told into folklore and into legend, and even going back to the Wild West with the gunslingers. I mean, these are things that permeate our society and civilization since the beginning of man.
Right.
And the more these things are told, the more power they are, and to the point where people believe them to be true, and then you don't know any better.
Right.
It's how mythology begins.
It's how religion begins.
Yes.
There are still people. I mean, there are people. You and I could watch the exact same episode of Ghost Adventures as the people that they now have tweeting live into the fucking show. Because I watched it last weekend because it's Halloween time. It's time to watch that garbage.
Okay.
It's fine. It's all right. But I'm sitting there looking at something and thinking, you are imprinting onto a situation what you want to have happen. But there's somebody watching the exact same episode I am that tweeted in asking legitimate questions about, did you find out what thing is or whatever?
Right. And
it's like, no, this is not. I don't see what you're seeing, and I certainly don't see what Zach Bagans is seeing. So it's the idea like they believe so heavily that ghosts or demons or vampires or werewolves are real that they take all of everything that they think might be that thing is that thing,
and then it becomes your identity.
And it becomes your identity, and it also becomes what you see
and you
and
double
what you
down
believe.
on it. You don't even know.
Exactly.
And you can't hear a critical counterpoint, because if you do, and it shatters even a fraction of your identity, that's damaging to your psyche.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And therefore, that breaks down the toxic fans. So thank you for listening to our discussion of not a movie that we watched, but Society.
You know what I find really, really, really... All right. Yeah, I'm just going to plow right through to the next thing. Because we're talking...
We've been talking for 14 minutes, and we've not touched the story of the movie.
Well, that's true. That's true.
But keep going.
This movie came out around the same time as Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Exactly.
That is fascinating to me, because they both deal with a central theme of a creator breathing life into something and it gaining power because of that belief.
And
right?
it's a year ahead of deconstructing the themes and the tropes with Scream.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. And yeah, absolutely. And I also find it interesting that in their own ways, Carpenter, Craven, and Cronenberg have all that. Hey, the 3 C's. The 3 C's. They've all tackled this in some way. Obviously, the foremost in the Mouth of Madness and New Nightmare, but David Cronenberg and Videodrome. I mean, is very much that sort of idea of this perpetuation of media or belief that gets insipid and kind of digs into your psyche, and you start to live this reality, whether or not, I don't know. I'm going down a tangent, but anyway.
So, all right. So here we are, 15 minutes and 40 seconds in. Let's now change focus to the actual plot of In the Mouth of Madness, because the plot is relatively simple. It just takes a lot of detours and winds its way around to this really kind of cool other idea, this other thing that's going on. But Sam Neill...
It uses a simple flashback mechanism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Sam Neill is a very, very well-respected and very good insurance inspector. Basically, if insurance companies at all sniff that there is impropriety or that there is a possible fraud going on, they bring him in, and he has cracked the toughest cases. And he's been hired by Bernie Casey. I almost called him by what I know him best as, which is the guy from I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker.
Oh yeah.
Or also
what?
He was in never mind. I'm getting off in my own tangent here with with like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Black. But anyway, or no, it was Dr. Black and Mr. Hyde. Anyway, it was a blaxploitation Jekyll and
Mr. Dr. Black and Mr. Hyde.
There it is.
God, he's been in everything. He was in Cornbread, Earl and Me.
Oh yeah,
Cleopatra
he's been in
Jones.
a ton of stuff. Bernie Casey is a bad mother.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway,
he was in Never Say Never Again.
Yes, he was. He played Felix Leiter in that. Correct?
Yep. Sure did.
So anyway, he hired Sam Neill, and they helped crack this case where this guy had burned his own stuff, but was playing a fraud angle to get money for all of these valuables that were in this storage place. So that gets him hired by Arcane Publishers, who is run by Charlton Heston.
Yep.
To help find their missing cash cow, basically, in that Sutter Cane, the writer. While he is being basically vetted for taking this job.
He's talking with the guy who hires him, the insurance guy who hires him.
Right, the Bernie Casey, and they're sitting there at a diner, and we see a guy come out of a bookstore with an axe, and people are like freaking out across the street.
That's a great shot.
And he's coming closer and closer.
It's very Carpenter.
Yeah.
That's sort of stalking.
Back in the background.
Yeah, you see it, you watch it, and it was pastiched really well in It Follows.
Yes.
That came out a few years back.
Yep.
Yeah, really, really cool.
And so he comes up, he smashes in the window, and he's about to axe Sam Neill up. And he asks, "Do you read Sutter Cane?"
Sutter Cane.
And like now, it's like Sam Neill is hearing this name that it's like nobody he's ever known. It's like it would be like it would be like somebody lived under a rock and they came out from under the rock, and you asked them if they ever read anything by Stephen King, and they're like, "Who?"
Yeah,
I mean that would be. I mean, like that's how removed Sam Neill is from what Sutter Cane is.
Yeah.
Because everybody else around him knows who this guy is.
He's had a day of cultural convergence. And
Exactly.
It's resulted in a guy almost axing him to death.
Right.
Yeah.
But he gets blown away by the cops. So when he gets hired by Charlton Heston to find their missing rider, first of all, Sam Neill's kind of like, "Are you sure this isn't just some publicity stunt?"
He smells the whole thing. He's
Right.
like this doesn't smell right.
You've got a new book coming.
Yeah.
This feels like you're selling a couple extra million books.
Right. It's all a publicity stunt.
Right. And
to the point where he even he starts to read some Sutter Cane novels to kind of get caught up on the case, and he figures out some kind of map that was written or sort of illustrated into all of the Sutter Cane paperback novel covers.
Right.
And he determines it's in that the real town where he bases all of his novels in, which is called something
Hobbs End.
Hobbs End, is in New Hampshire somewhere.
Yes.
So he's like, this is clearly a fucking promotional,
right? It's like
gimmick.
Come on.
Yeah,
it's like I can see through that. I'm the fucking Batman of this world.
Yeah,
I can, I can sniff this shit out like that. So he gets basically sent to find. We do find out the guy who nearly axed him was the agent.
The agent, yep.
For the writer for Sutter Cane.
The editor is this young woman who works for Charlton Heston.
Right, and so Charlton Heston's like, "Hey, you're taking Linda. Linda's her name." He's like, "You're taking Linda with you. We'll find him." And and then that'll be it. And it's like, if you find them, great.
Because they insist that there's no publicity stunt and that he's missing, and we need to find him.
That he's legitimately missing. You are the best at finding him. Find him, and obviously, if you find him, there's going to be no insurance claim,
right?
Or whatever.
And they haven't even filed an insurance claim.
It's just that they want to find him.
The insurance company is getting nervous that they're going to file
because it's kind of like
they're stepping in preemptively.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Lloyd's of London. It's like, this guy is worth a bunch to this company,
right? Yes,
and so
exactly.
We're not going to.
It could be like $100,000 or $100 million payout or some shit. Yeah, who knows? Right.
So this is where things kind of start taking a different turn. Leading up to the first 35 minutes of this movie, it seems okay. There's that weird axe dude.
There's the first scene where Sam Neill is drugged into the insane asylum.
The movie starts with almost like a cold open after the credits of after everything has happened. Sam Neill's being thrown into an insane asylum, and he's retelling the story.
Yeah, he sees some spooky shit. He realizes I'm safe here, and he starts telling his story to the psychiatrist played by David Warner,
right?
Who is also now not buying it because he thinks that Sam Neill wants to stay there and is acting purposefully crazy in different ways.
Yes,
which he is. He absolutely is.
He is, but he's also telling the story.
But then he's telling him this whole story, and the story is what he believes to be real. Yeah,
right. So here's where we.
And David Warner's like, I don't know what to fucking believe.
Right. This is where you start getting into the idea of where they really start driving home the idea of the objectivism, the objectivist view of the world.
At first, there's a really good clue in the scene with Neil and Warner. Sam Neill's like, it's starting to get really bad out there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? And you see a little hint of something from David Warner, but not
But then he
a
pushes
lot.
through it.
Yeah, he pushes through it.
He pushes it aside and pushes through to the question.
It opens like a really interesting question from the start of the movie. What's happening outside?
Right.
And how did we get there? Or is nothing happening outside and maybe Sam Neill is just a nuts?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
it immediately divides the audience into these thoughts. And then from there, it's going to fuck with all of those realities.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then, but for the next half hour or so, it's like, okay, this is just a missing person. There's
Right.
that one weird psycho guy, but that's just might have been coincidence.
Yep.
You know. So we've got, okay, so now Linda and Sam Neill's character, Linda played by Julie Carmen, who I think is just very, very
She's really
attractive.
pretty. She's really pretty. Yeah.
Unfortunately, she doesn't score very high on my wardrobe
Your
quotient
sexy wardrobe
because
quotient.
she's dressed like a '90s
Grandma.
Grandma. Yeah. It's like they really, really Hillary'd her up.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's all silky, flowy pantsuits.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all
The first time you see her, it's
baggy
like
clothes. And,
yeah, it's like the first time you see her, she looks like she will fuck your world up on the Xerox machine.
Yeah.
Then later, it's just like grandma.
Yeah, and they don't have a ton of chemistry, mostly by design. I think.
But that's purposely by design. It both plays with. Here we go again. It both plays with what is expected a male and female character to do.
When he's slimy from the start too. Yeah.
Right, because he's coming on to her.
Yeah.
He's making innuendo.
You know what she reminds me of? She reminds me of the accountant that Brewster hires in Brewster's Millions. That's who she reminds me of in this movie.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like there's innuendo. And then it plays on the idea of this is what's expected of two characters like this.
For sure.
But that's also not just a vehicle of expectation in even into the 90s, into the mid 90s of what a male and female character will do, but also it's part of the story too.
Yeah. But they hit the road.
They hit the road. He's driving. They can't find the place. She starts driving.
But this is, I think, what you wanted to talk a little bit about, and I do, about sort of where we get to understand the personal philosophies of these two characters.
Right.
I mean, Carpenter goes out of his way to talk about
and
define objectivism.
So Sam Neill is you did a little research, so I'll take Sam Neill's side, which is how I live anyway. So Sam Neill is, this thing I just knocked on is real.
Yeah.
It is real. This is reality. I see that tree is real. You see that tree must be real. There is no way that a book can scare you because the book is not reality.
Right.
We here sitting in this car is reality. She responds with the opposite.
Yeah,
side.
she responds with, well, I'm more concerned that the unknown could become reality, and what that unknown is going to could be really scary. Basically, she's concerned that what Sutter Cane writes, if it's real, that frightens her because she sees a possibility that basically she sees a possibility in all things possibly being real. I don't know. Like
what it comes down to, I think, is she actually says, what I feel is real is what the majority believes is real.
Yeah.
And if he sells 1 million books and 1 million people believe that what he's writing is real, then that is, if they become the majority, then that is what is real.
Yeah.
And Sam Neill is like, no.
Yeah.
What is physical is real.
So it's like he's very objectivist and rational, which the objectivism. Man, I can't say that word. Is very rooted in sort of almost militant rationalism.
Right.
But
if I believe X, then X must be true.
But she kind of defines for me the definition of Lovecraftian horror. When she describes the fear she would have if what Sutter Cane wrote was true, right?
Right.
So she doesn't know if there's this veneer between two worlds. She doesn't know what the unknown is, but she fears the unknown, and that's very Lovecraftian.
Right,
a fear of the unknown.
Well, why I think she actually embodies the objectivist view, because Sam Neill is part of the realist view.
I don't think so.
Well, no, I think of it that way because he says, I see this table that's in front of us is real. She takes the opposite view of, but what if suddenly 3 people in the room say that table isn't real? We now believe that table is not real, so therefore it is not real. And siloing her opinion based on what they feel is objectively true, not what they feel is the
see, I don't know. I think we've got our philosophies mixed up, to be honest. So here is objectivism was basically created by Ayn Rand.
Yes.
And
it's very popular these days.
Yes, and it's defined basically by the concept of man as a heroic being with his own happiness as the moral purpose of his life, with productive achievement as his noblest activity, and reason as his only absolute.
Right.
That, to me, is Sam Neill's character in this.
Yes. I feel that they both have it, because they both reason out a different way of viewing
that very well
realism.
May well be. And I think that here's what I want to also quote. I think this was really well put by someone on Reddit, and I'll give this Redditor total credit here. Studio Decadent, so Studiodekadent said Studio Decadent. There you go, with a K. On May 6, 2014, said, in many ways, I think Lovecraftian horror is the perfect horror according to objectivism. Objectivism is anthropocentric and believes in the power of human reason. Lovecraftian horror is all about rejecting anthropocentrism and dwelling on the frailties of human cognitive faculties. So to me, I think you're right. I think she is having an objectivist breakdown. Okay. She is allowing the Lovecraftian horror to fracture her identity and her belief system.
Okay. I would also argue, though, but no, I agree with that. I would also say, though, that there's a certain brand of objectivism that's very popular right now, and I'm not going to get into too much of agreement or disagreement because this splits a lot of people on both sides of every aisle.
Yep.
But Jordan Peterson follows the idea of whatever I want to make true is true to me.
Oh, sure.
And he's very objectivist, and he sells a form of psychology to a group of people that will reject what somebody else will tell them is true.
I think part of that is the pursuit. It's this twisted pursuit of happiness.
It's the pursuit of personal well-being.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. That's I think that portion of it. Yes, is exactly right. It has many forms.
Right. And so when she now says, if now the majority believes that these monsters are a real thing, therefore they must be real. That is that version of that objectivist brand.
Okay.
But it's not the rigid reasoning of I'm looking at this table, I can feel this table is real.
Yeah.
You agree with that because we live in a realistic world. That is I think more of a realist objectivism more so than some of the more new wave objectivism, which is I will make what I think is real.
Right.
which leads into a whole nother. I'm not even going to get into the spectrum of
but then I think we talked about this briefly before we got into the episode. What is really at play here is a very it is sort of like a mix, I guess, of that warped sense, not necessarily a warped sense of objectivism, but a different sense of it with predetermination.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, because the predetermination ultimately is what dooms Sam Neill.
Yeah.
Yes, because then, so ultimately,
which in many ways should be like the absolute antithesis to objectivism, right? Because you, as an objectivist, you should believe that you're in control of your own actions, that every choice you make is in your own best interest.
Exactly.
Right.
But then there's the determinist, which is the things you can't control now steer you into whichever direction. But so how that plays into this movie is that they hit the road while she is. So the first part of the first leg of the road trip, Sam Neill is driving. She is asleep. And he does this real dick move with this horn.
Yeah, what the
this
fuck
bicycle
is that?
horn.
He's got a bicycle horn in his glove box.
Yeah, he's just a
Why?
dick.
Yeah.
Well, because if she falls asleep, I mean,
he thinks
again, it was determined that she was going to be in that car and asleep, so he needs to wake her up.
There are a couple like kind of goofy moments like that in this movie that are just kind of written by inconvenience.
But it informs his character of being.
It serves the character.
It serves his character of being very. It's very selfish.
Yeah,
he's a very selfish character.
Yeah, which yeah.
So
that tracks.
Yeah. So he.
I mean, really, they both are.
They are.
They're both looking out for their own interest.
Right, because without Sutter Cane, she doesn't have a job.
Yeah.
Because she is his editor. So when she's driving, she starts seeing weird shit. Like there's this kid on a bike who then the next time she sees him, he's a very old man. Then the next time she sees him, she hits him.
Yeah.
But then he's able to get up and ride off, and he keeps saying, he won't let me leave. He won't let me leave. And she ultimately goes into this weird tunnel that on the other end is daylight now because it was stark night.
Yep.
Now she comes through that, and they're in the daytime, and they are right outside Hobbs End. And so they go into the town. It's an idyllic, picture-perfect town. But she knows every single little detail of the town because she knows what is in the upcoming, not yet released book, In the Mouth of Madness.
Yeah.
Which is the first sign that somebody's not being truthful about something.
Yep, absolutely.
Because he says, well, I read the other books before we left. Don't you remember? I know what's in these books, too. And she's like, you don't know what's in the next book.
And she claims that earlier, I think that she hadn't read any of them, right?
That the only person who knew anything was the agent.
Yeah.
But then she says, no, the only people who knew anything about what's in the book is his agent and me.
And me, yeah.
Which then leads to weird things happening. And she's like seeing things and he's not seeing them and he's not buying into what she's seeing. Like there's a little old lady who was in a previous book that supposedly chopped up her husband.
Yeah.
And he's like, she can't, the only thing she's doing wrong is dipping her dentures into his beer.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
But then Linda ultimately comes out with saying it was a publicity stunt. He was meant to be missing so that we can build momentum towards In the Mouth of Madness. But he didn't show up.
Right. Where he was supposed to be, he never showed up. He disappeared. Right. He legit disappeared. But Sam Neill still thinks everything happening around him are actors. Yeah.
And they're really good at acting because, it's like there's special effects at play. There's all sorts of, hidden speakers doing spooky stuff. And
he sees a guy blow his head off with a shotgun, and he's still clinging to some sense of explanation beyond what he can understand, or within what he can understand.
Yes.
Yeah.
So stuff starts coming to a head when they go to this really spooky church. That's like Eastern Orthodox, maybe. Slavic.
I think it was Russian or Orthodox or something. Yeah.
So it's
a real church.
It's a real church in Canada.
It looks really cool. It's got big spires and stuff.
Yeah,
but it's got
really
like
cool
flat
looking.
concrete on the sides. It's very modern.
It's a Catholic
86
church, but it has
was when it was built.
Yes, it's very it's Catholic, but it has Eastern.
Yeah, it's some Eastern Orthodox version of Catholicism. Yeah.
And so they're there. They're looking around. It's like, okay, this group of townspeople show up with like shotguns, and they're like going to like I don't know like the angry villagers.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like they're gonna fucking lynch Frankenstein.
Yeah. And Linda's like, we got to go. It's like these people aren't going to be here for good reasons.
Yeah.
And Sam Neill's like, what? It's like, okay, so what? There's like people here. We're finally seeing people here.
Yeah.
And
they're actually showing some kind of emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
there's something to learn here.
And like the main guy who's played by the guy in the painting in Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah, he's Vigo the Carpathian in Ghostbusters 2.
And he's like
immediately recognizable.
Right.
Like, I was like, holy fuck, is that Vigo Carpathian?
and so he's like, Sutter, give me back my son or whatever. And the doors of the cathedral start opening and closing on their own. You see this little kid that's like this guy's son. And then eventually Sutter Cane shows up. And Sam Neill's like, is that our guy?
Yeah, is that Sutter Cane?
And Linda's like, yeah, but
sure
she does not feel good about what's going on anymore. I would not.
No.
Because those doors were opening and closing on their own, and it's a big spooky church.
Is there some... This is sort of a modern version of this, is like a Silent Hill, right?
Oh, yeah.
You sort of find yourself in this place...
That is damned.
That you can't escape, and nothing makes sense. Yeah,
right.
And all sorts of just horrifying shit starts happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And things are turning into things, and stuff is happening, and things and stuff.
Yeah, things and stuff.
Things and stuff is scary in New Hampshire. In fact, I wrote down, New Hampshire be scary, yo.
New Hampshire be scary, yo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scary. So basically, Sutter Cane, ultimately we find out, because Linda goes investigating a little bit more on her own, that he is now writing everything that's happening. And behind this really gross oozy door are some extra dimensional monsters.
Yeah. That's full. It's full on like H.P. Lovecraft.
It's the veil,
cosmic veil. Yeah, it's exactly right.
It's the cosmic veil where his new, as he calls them, his new publishers, are feeding him the power to basically rewrite the world.
Uh-huh.
And once In the Mouth of Madness gets out there, it becomes religion. Basically, every new person who reads that book spreads that new realism.
Yeah, there is a viral aspect to that.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So because he basically drives her insane.
It's fucking fake news, man.
I know, right?
It's fucking fake news. It's amazing.
It's
fucking amazing. Yeah, it is social media.
So he basically drives Linda insane by having her read the book like all at once, like it all hits her at once, and like she starts making out with him, and he's got a gross monster thing on his back.
Yeah, it's this really cool kind of Lovecraftian body horror. It's
a little basket case too.
Yeah, I was also thinking it's very much Society.
Oh yeah. Morphing into these other beings.
Yeah.
And she's into it, and it's like gross.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
But now, basically, she's now realizing that she is fully part of this story, and that she's part of Sutter Cane's world now, and she, like everybody in town, is basically sucked up into this story, into this world that Sutter Cane is controlling.
Yep.
And the whole point of everything is that at the end, the idea was, once he finished In the Mouth of Madness, basically Sam Neill's character, who is also part of the story,
so
he never existed before. These people never existed, because we do find out that Charlton Heston has no idea who this woman is.
Who the woman is, yeah.
So the guy who blows his brains out in the bar and in the town is like, I don't know what was first, us or the book. We don't know.
Yeah.
It's like there's a self-realization that, oh my God, we're not real things. Or maybe we are. We don't know, but it's driving them insane.
And there is actually like a joke. The most overt philosophical joke in it is when Sutter Cane says, "I think, therefore you are."
Yeah.
Right? You know, and that sort of dualism aspect. It's not used correctly philosophically, but
it's basically
but
saying
it definitely pokes a fun at this sort of like what does it mean to have, I don't know, just
well, it's influencer type of stuff. It's the idea of propagation of something that may or may not be true, but because one person believes it, tells another person, it originates someplace. It's in a way, it's how, like you said, fake news or conspiracy theories spread among people. It begins with an influencer, and the influencer, which is it's a job title that people have now.
It is. Yeah.
It's weird, man. It's like it's social media influencers.
Uh-huh.
It's branding.
Yep.
It's the idea of
tastemakers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it begins somewhere. There's an origin point, and then it spreads out like a virus. And it is what one person or what a small group of people say, well, we think it. Now you are it. And you believe it.
And it's interesting because we all live in such a media vacuum, right? Whether you believe you do or not, you do. And when you live in a vacuum like that, a small segment of people who is really, really loud can seem a lot more influential than they really are.
Yes. Absolutely, yes. Yes. For a decade, I have been somebody who says that just because somebody is the loudest group doesn't mean that they actually are getting anything that they want. It just means that they're a loud group to ultimately signal to the opposite side. It's a terrible echo chamber,
and it's
of one side yelling crazy stuff over here, and then the other side yelling back at them, and meanwhile 80% of the rest of the world is saddled in between these two people.
Yeah.
The 80% is still in charge.
And
it's the 20% that's insane.
But it used to be that politically, at least, all the battles were fought on the margins. Right? That's the way it used to be. That was the safe way to progress, right? Because things still progress, but at the margins.
Right.
Nowadays,
and it's a lot of compromise.
Yeah.
Which seems to be kind of vacant now. There seems to be no compromise.
Right. But nowadays, because of this vacuum, everybody, the extremes argue really, really loudly, and they are now starting to win because the majority of people will accept an extreme to get more of what they want,
or they have no choice but to accept the extreme.
So I mean, it's there's a certain Supreme Court candidate who just got confirmed today, and that candidate would not, I don't believe, truly have been confirmed even 10 years ago.
No,
in a Republican Congress, I don't believe it would have happened. But the partisanship has become so extreme that both sides are willing to accept an extremist if they seem to be the loudest person in the room, and also will give them more than a more moderate decision will give them.
Sure.
It's dangerous.
Right. And it's right. And while we've kind of shot off onto a tangent there, behind the scenes, that's what's happening in this story. It's the idea of a small influence spreading like a virus out to the public, because at the end of the movie, there's no way. Okay, so so there you have the fact that Sam Neill is locked into his purpose is to deliver the manuscript of In the Mouth of Madness.
And he thinks he can fight it, too.
He thinks
He's
he can
still
fight
trying
it.
to fight.
And
he tries to
tries
burn
fight.
the manuscript. He does like things that he thinks like, I can fight this.
Right, and it keeps coming back. It's the old story of like the cat who keeps coming back.
Yeah, yeah.
You know? You think you get rid of something and it keeps coming back.
Yep.
And so ultimately, he without any control over it himself, he has unleashed the virus, the thought virus, out into the world. And now Sutter Cane is essentially, through him, have created the way for his quote-unquote new publishers to essentially seed this planet, and people are turning into those other monsters. And he even says at the end, it's like, humanity is dying now. It's so many people read Sutter Cane's book that those who don't read will either be picked up by the movie that's been made, or it has, or they will be ultimately eaten. I think is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
They're either going to be cattle or they're going to be converted. In a way, it's kind of how vampires work too. You're either eaten or you're converted.
Yep.
So it plays a lot on that social consciousness idea, and there's still room, I think, to question whether or not Sam Neill did unleash the terror, or I mean,
it's
what
like,
you see in the movie. If you believe the reasoning that what you're seeing is what's happening, when he returns to tell Charlton Heston that all this crazy shit happened and you sent this woman with me, and Charlton Heston's like, I don't know who you're talking about, and by the way, we published that book like 9 weeks ago and the movie's being released tomorrow
in a month, or
whatever. It's like, at that point in time, you're told to believe that that the world's fucked, that the monsters are coming, the monsters are here, but there's still a little room to think that it's just the story, it's just the book. It's not realism.
Yeah.
It's just the story.
Yeah.
It's not the realistic ending of the story. It's all of this stuff is just cleverly written into a story that is just the book.
Well, if you take that one step further, when he goes into the theater, and he realizes the movie In the Mouth of Madness is the movie that you, the audience member, are watching right now. Yeah. Like then it's sort of kind of It's like, oh wait a minute. It's trying to. It's almost. It's trying to bring the movie within the movie into your reality.
Right. You know what would have been really cool if I could request one little special edition change to this movie. At the end, when you're watching him watch himself, if what he's watching is a mirror image.
Oh, neat. Yeah.
Because then what you could be is you're on this side watching it and he's on the other side watching it.
Yeah.
And you're both watching the same thing.
Yeah.
But perspective has flipped.
That would be neat. Yeah.
But that's just me.
What are you going to do?
What are you going to do? You know?
What are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've talked a lot about the themes. This is a movie that, again, here we are another week with a difficult movie to actually explain what exactly, because there are so many twists and turns, and it plays with what you think is real and what you are being told the linear narrative is, and then it cuts over to the other lane, and then it comes back to this lane, and then goes into another lane yet.
And it's two things, so many things that are striking to me just at this moment in time with this type of meta horror, because it really is.
Yeah.
And its comparisons to Craven's New Nightmare, which are striking to me. but you also have this idea of, all right, who is the protagonist in like every fucking Stephen King book? It's a writer, right?
It's a writer,
usually,
and usually an atheist.
Yeah. And so you have this sort of, not only do they know that we're going to poke a little fun at King here, and that Sutter Cane is kind of like a King type character, but this is not in any way, shape, or form affiliated with Stephen King, but he would probably write a movie like this, right? Because of the power of what can be written into reality, and the fact that our I don't know, antagonist is a writer.
Yeah, as long as there's a big mountain of cocaine, Stephen King could write this movie.
Yeah, so I love that. I love that not only is it sort of a homage, if you will, or even a slight send-up of Stephen King, it's also a story that I think he would gravitate toward.
Yeah, I'd be curious. I guarantee Stephen King gave this a thumbs up.
I would have to assume he loves this movie.
Yeah, there are things that Stephen King loves that it's like
that are just terrible.
Whoa, yeah, it's like, whoa, dude, that is bad.
Yeah, his taste in movies, honestly, is crap. It's bad.
But you know what? Though he tends to also like the things that we like, so I assume that he's all in with John Carpenter. He's all in with Clive Barker.
Of course.
You know, he's but he likes some real suspect things.
And it's interesting. I was trying to rack my brain about Stephen King and trying to figure out, has he ever actually written a story where what a person writes becomes reality? And I feel like there's got to be something. But the only thing I could come up with was Do McKee, which wasn't even a writer. It was a painter. This guy realized that whatever he painted came true. And that sort of... that even came years after this movie was made. So it's interesting that he never really delved too much into that. Maybe he feels like by the act of writing a book alone, he's doing a little bit of that, right?
Again, if there's a big enough pile of cocaine, he'll do whatever you need.
He's been sober for decades, Jeff. Come on, give the man a break. Give him a break.
I'm not saying that he shouldn't like give in to like the crazy. Go for it, man. Go nuts.
It, man.
Go crazy. Go nuts. Anyway. So there is a little bit of nostalgia that I have for this. You know,
Me too.
This hit right around that time. You know, so it came out right before my 18th birthday. But like I said, I know I saw it on a weeknight. Probably it's like, hey, you know, my buddy Andy is like, hey, Andy, you want to go check this? He and I saw a ton of movies that year before he went off to college at the end of that summer of '95. But you know, we talked about Lord of Illusions. That was one that he and I saw. But there is a very special play. For years, we would make references to In the Mouth of Madness. You and I have made references for years.
We created the first meme I ever saw.
Yeah,
we created it.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
it was personal. It was very very inside jokey. It would never have been something that would have been a true meme.
And we can't really name names either. But we had the crazed picture of Sam Jackson in a straitjacket. Sam Jackson, Sam Neill in the straitjacket, and we would send it to each other. Whenever a certain circumstance coworker would come to us and ask us a question. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was far more you than me that I got to ask questions.
I was probably just nicer, I guess.
No, I was busy. You know, it's like, I think. No, I don't think that was the case.
See, I just
Yeah.
I just poked you.
Yeah, I know.
I poked your ego there.
I know.
It's okay.
Know.
Maybe I was just better at my job then.
Oh,
dang! But to my detriment, because she did come to me a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
let's hop off before we get to let's hop off this train before we get in, because we've already said coworker. Good. We've got we've got plenty. We've got pronoun.
There's now plenty of what do they call it? The data that people collect on you to hack your shit, right?
Oh yeah, whatever. whatever. It's right. Yeah. Because
somebody could like detective work who we're talking about at this point, but maybe not. Anyway, the nostalgia factor.
Yeah, so it's there for this movie. I mean, it's a movie that before we watched it for this episode, I hadn't seen it for a long time.
It's been a while.
But there was a lot that's like, oh yeah, I remember that, and it's like the plot points were always there, but just because I hadn't seen a movie in a while didn't mean I enjoyed it any less. And certainly watching this again, it's like the first thing that happened when the credits happened, you looked at me as like, that movie fucking rules.
It fucking rules. And,
yeah.
and here's the thing that is going to be a little shocking, I think, for you to hear, is that I'm not certain that I've ever watched this movie in one setting. Like really paid 100% attention in one sitting. And I'll tell you why. And this is going to get real nostalgic.
Okay.
This is going to go back into like formative shit in my youth,
okay.
right? So, and it might get a little sad, just fair warning. Okay. So, when I mentioned earlier that I moved to Indiana in 1995 from West Virginia, after we had moved, we went back, my family did, for a visit for some reason. I think it was my parents were going to some kind of retirement party or something, and they didn't want to leave me and my sister in Indiana. Sure. I was only...
Well, you would have been...
I was 16,
yeah, I was going to say you're
like
a couple years younger than me.
Yeah, and they didn't want to leave us behind, so they took us with them. And I was like, well, I don't really want to go, but if I do, can I stay with my friend?
Sure.
So-and-so. I'll just say his name, Zach. And can I stay with my friend Zach? And they were like, yeah, if that's okay with him and his parents, sure, right? That was a sweet spot in time where anything I asked for, I would get because...
Well, you were uprooted.
Right,
yeah.
So I stayed with him, and we called the gang, and we got together with friends.
Oh, the gang.
The gang, yeah. Like all these friends that I had that I just moved away from, and I was like, oh, it's so cool, we're hanging out. But the core was like me, Zach, and our friend Sabrina. And we went to rent movies. That's what we always did. We watched movies. So we went to go rent movies.
Some of the best fun memories I have are walking around a video store.
Yeah.
And we worked at a video store, and I'm talking about other than that video store.
Yeah. And that was back in the day too, when you rented videos with friends, sometimes you only kind of half watched them.
Sure.
It was part of the social interaction, right?
It's stuff that's going on in the background.
Right.
Yeah.
So we were like looking for movies, and in A Mouth of Madness, we were like, yeah, let's that sounds cool. We want to see it. So we rent it, and then this kind of weird sort of chain of events start to occur. Sabrina was always a little bit playful, right?
Okay.
And I was in the car. She was in the car, and she started to kind of fuck with Zach. And she was like, "Oh, we're gonna drive off." She was doing the whole bullshit, like, "Come on, get in the car," and then would drive a little bit.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Oh,
Zach,
yeah.
Which everybody hates when somebody does that to them.
But everybody likes doing it.
Everybody likes doing it to someone else.
else.
Yeah, she was doing that to Zach.
Right.
She was doing that to Zach, and then she just kind of took off. Yeah, but then she was planning to come back, and she like did a circle around, and when she did, Zach was gone.
Oh my god!
Yeah, and we were like, "Fuck, what do we do?" And we didn't have cell phones or shit like that, beepers, nothing.
You'd be lucky if you had a beeper at that
So
point.
we just stayed in the parking lot, right?
Yeah.
Because we thought, oh, well, he'll come back, and we'll go watch this movie. Well, we wait in the parking lot for, I don't know, at least an hour, maybe longer, just sitting in the backseat of her car, just chatting and talking and waiting for Zach to come back. And eventually it was like, this is kind of ridiculous. I think he left. And he was in St. Albans. We were in St. Albans, and he ended up walking. Fucking dickhead. Walked all the way from St. Albans to Charleston to his house. I think it took him hours. But he was pissed.
Sure.
He was pissed. And then and we were like, well, what do we do? So we ended up just going to her house, and we put the movie in. It was like, I guess we're going to watch the movie. And we keep hanging out, and we kind of start to cuddle a little bit, which is weird because I had never really had a physical girlfriend. Like, I've had a girlfriend, but it was always like just we're too afraid to like kiss each other, to touch each other, kind of bullshit.
It's that preteen and teenage kind of, you're going with somebody, but it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were actually kind of like, it was exciting. It was like this, really my first sort of like physical, sexual encounter, if you will, right?
Right, yeah.
And I wasn't paying attention to the movie at all. But we both were kind of falling asleep. And then she woke up and she was like, "Get up. Let's go." And we go to this park and we go to just this little, those like picnic overhang things,
covered,
whatever the hell those are. We go into one of those, and she was a lot shorter. She gets up on the picnic table bench, stands on that. She's like, "That's better." So she's like face to face with me, and she kisses me, right? And we have a nice moment.
And then she turned into a tentacle monster?
And then she turned into a tentacle monster.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, exactly. And I woke up, and it was like the snow at the end of In the Mouth of Madness because the tape had run out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it started to just stop and then automatically rewind itself. Yeah. But no. I mean, it
that didn't get sad. That got terrifying there for a second. Thanks.
Yeah, but no, it was a pivotal moment in my life.
Sure.
Right?
Sure, absolutely.
And I never saw her again. And Zach, she dropped me back off at Zach's, and I walked in and I made sure he was fucking okay. His door was unlocked. And first thing I was like, "Where is he?" And he was asleep on the couch. And I woke him up. I was like, "Dude, what happened?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't know. I was pissed, so I just decided to walk home." And I was like, "Dude, I'm sorry." I was really upset that happened. Sure. It was my best friend, and he's like, "Oh, it's okay." And I was like, at that point, it was early, and my parents were coming to pick me up because it was Sunday morning to go to church, and I hadn't really slept. So I was kind of like waited. I just smoked cigarettes out in front of Zach's house while he slept in the wee early hours of the morning. I waited for my parents to come pick me up, and they did, and that was the last I saw Zach. Huh. Fast forward, I don't know, 30 years? No, not 30 years. 20 years, I guess. Yeah, 20 years.
About 20 years now, yeah.
I've kept in touch with both of them on social media. I'd written Zach a few times after that, and he'd written me back. It's pre-email, basically. And but Zach passed away.
Oh,
this year. Earlier this year, had just a crazy fluke medical thing that happened to him. He lived over in Thailand, worked for government IT, U.S. government IT in Thailand. Yeah, and he had a just a crazy thing that happened and was critical, and then was passed away. And I never got a chance to see him again. You know, so it's like the last time I saw someone who was just so important to my life, even though for 20 years we didn't see each other since then, we kept in touch on social media, and we knew we knew each other's likes and dislikes, and would encourage those things with one another. But to know that the last time I saw him was the night I saw this movie for the first time.
Yeah.
And that night kind of sucked for him. It's
bad for him, good for you, sort of good for you. I
right.
mean, yeah, it's...
So how's that for a fucking nostalgia burrito?
Boy.
That's my story. But isn't it interesting?
Yeah,
I mean that a movie can place a marker in your life.
Yeah.
And that's what this movie is, one of the biggest markers in my life. It really is.
Yes, and there are a couple of movies that land that way for me too.
I couldn't watch this movie all the way through until today.
Yeah.
I used to watch this movie and get homesick.
Yeah.
Right? And I would watch it, and I would pick it up, and I'd watch it, and I'd eventually get through it, or I would only half pay attention to it. And I've seen it a few times since, but this was really the first time I paid attention to it.
Right.
Since then. Yep.
Yeah. No, and I know exactly what you're talking about. I've got a couple of moments that happened right around that same time, because it wasn't long after that. It was like actually the day after I graduated high school, I started working at the video store we worked at.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So there were times where it's like, it's Monday night. You got take the movie home so you can watch it, know what it's like, as long as it comes back next day.
Yeah.
And there was one night, and this is a story for another time because it doesn't relate directly to this movie. But there's a movie. I took 3 movies home, but there were other things that happened. There was something else that's very, very pivotal that happened that night. That nothing like what. In fact, it was rather traumatizing what happened to me. There was plan for friends to come over to watch these movies, and it's like, I can get it back to the video store in time because it'll be like the morning by the time we're done.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But the fact that I still had them come over despite something very bad happening to me.
Yeah.
It kind of ties those people in those movies kind of all together.
Yeah,
into one.
Definitely.
And it's something that I still think about, and still, there's a couple of jokes from that night, which really, the joke, some of the jokes would be kind of considered in bad taste, but it was one of those things where it's like, if I didn't laugh about it, it would be that much worse.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those things,
Yeah.
but but there are still some things also that happen, that are jokes of things that had nothing to do with the events that I still think of, and I still chuckle a little bit. It's like, oh, that was pretty funny when that happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the mid 90s is a very, very sweet spot, I think, for both of us.
Oh yeah.
We talked a little bit about it when we were talking about like the Warlock movies, and talking a little bit about it when we were talking about Joe Bob Briggs.
Yeah.
And there is the beginning of that era actually ties very deeply into next week's movie that we're going to talk about.
Oh,
with Demolition Man.
Yeah.
Because that was right around the time, I'm 16 now. I can drive places. I can take myself to the movies without having to walk or ask for a ride. That movie came out, I think, during when it started getting colder. I think it came out like in October of 93 or something like that. So it's like, it's like now I have a car. I don't have to ask my mom for a ride. I can go whenever I want, also. Or I don't have to walk when it's cold out and stuff like that. So right around 93 or so, when I started driving myself through, 98 or 9, it's like there's a lot of nostalgia there for me, and we're hitting the sweet spot there next week with some really, really good teenage nostalgia for me.
Yeah, we're gonna eat some Taco Bell.
We're gonna definitely eat some Taco Bell, and
they won the franchise wars.
They did, but in Europe, when that movie was released, it was Pizza Hut.
Well, it's fitting then that now you have the combination Taco Bell and Pizza Hut.
Exactly. Well, they could switch one for the other because it was all
the same company. Yeah.
Right. We're also going to most definitely have a debate about capital punishment. There's a very, very famous story between you and me.
In our circle.
It was just you, me, and Shannon. I think we're the only 3 people there.
Yeah.
To hear the
mic drop argument
that I had.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I feel like I should put
I'm
it on
mic drop in air quotes.
No, no, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on YouTube, and I'm going to put mic drop in all caps, and I'm going to say it destroyed you in all caps.
Jason Film Seizure gets destroyed
by mic drop moment.
Wonder how many clicks that'll get. 4?
None that we want. None that we want. So,
all right.
Any closing thoughts?
I have a few things, loose strings, if you will. Sam Neill has been in 2 of the best modern Lovecraftian horror films of the 90s.
Oh, I know what the other one is.
Modern of the 90s. What's the other one?
Event Horizon.
Yep. Absolutely.
A lot of people don't like that.
That movie is really good.
It is. I
Yeah.
liked it quite a bit. It scared the shit out of me. when I saw it.
Shannon always called it Shining in Space, and that's partly true too. But I feel like it is way more Lovecraftian than The Shining.
Yeah, but it's. I think the basic structure lends itself more to The Shining.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Because it is watching one person descend into madness, but this also includes crazy monster madness.
Yeah, like
So-
and like a interdimensional portal. And,
Right.
I mean, it's these like hell beings basically. Yeah. That would be a fun double feature with this. I think if you were looking for that kind of thing. I also think, and I'm going to suggest a triple feature. If you're looking at doing In the Mouth of Madness, I think about looking at New Nightmare again, if you haven't watched that recently, and also Cronenberg's Videodrome. I think all three of those movies play really well together.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And pair that with a red wine and a nice steak.
Yes. Or pair it with a nice red wine and squid.
It's good. Yeah, I like that.
Eat tentacles while you watch tentacle monsters.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. No, I mean, Sam Neill, I had mentioned, I think, was very nearly considered a candidate for James Bond. I think if I want to say that he might have been in the running at the same time as Pierce Brosnan and Timothy Dalton, right around that time. It might have also been, he might have been considered if Roger Moore had stepped away a little earlier.
Yeah, and Sam Neill was still a pretty big star at this point too, because
of Jurassic
Park, right?
Yeah.
They do move in herds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's in one of the biggest movies of all time, and it really reinvigorated his career. Now, of course, he had been known before.
Sure.
I mean, he played Riley Ace of Spies for the, I think it was a BBC production. It might have been an actual movie. But that's a character that's has very heavy influence on James Bond and on Ian Fleming.
Sam Neill always. I'm glad he wasn't James Bond, because he doesn't quite have the look, I don't think.
He would have,
and he's sort of he's small in stature. I always thought it would be a little odd. I thought
I don't think he is right. Like
he plays
as
a pretty good everyman.
Yeah,
usually
he's not as pretty as a Pierce Brosnan. He's not as rugged as a Timothy Dalton or Daniel Craig.
I guess he's just more relatable.
Yeah,
as a normal guy.
Right.
Yeah.
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 So yeah, that's
and that's kind of like a toxin for James Bond, right?
Yeah.
Like you want your James Bond to be somewhat grounded in, I don't know, a little bit of rugged realism, but at the same time should be bigger than life.
Yes, if you can be,
they should be able to back up all of their moxie, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And that a lot of that comes from the Sean Connery of attractive man on front, but there's a darkness to him.
Yeah.
And so the ruggedness comes through the darkness.
Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, obviously the one that sticks out like a sore thumb is Roger Moore because he does not have that darkness. But his time, his era, was not a place for that ruggedness, I would say.
He always, I don't ever think that he portrayed was. I don't know. Is it ruggedly handsome? Was he really like a heartthrob? Do women find him sexy?
Absolutely. Before, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
before he was James Bond.
Oh yeah, between Maverick and the Saint.
Oh sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So I mean, he was much better put together. He was. I would say that he is much more of a London styling.
Yeah.
Even though he grew up as a Cockney.
That's funny.
Yeah, but he had to learn to be an upper class speaker. And so I think he fit the idea of a city Bond, whereas you could see the other ones living outside of the city or being.
I think you did kind of hit the nail on the head though with there's not a lot of dimension to his portrayal.
No, but that wasn't. I mean, he was the snarky one.
Yeah.
He was much more snarky. He was much more. He was the far bigger than life Bond.
So who would we have? Sam Neill instead of Pierce Brosnan? Was that how
Probably.
it would have gone?
Yeah, probably.
Oh, they made the right choice.
Or and also probably instead of Timothy Dalton too.
Oh, interesting.
It would have been replacing both of them because
okay.
the idea would have been. Yeah, it would have depended on when he took over, and it would have depended also upon whether the series could have carried forward. There is that weird period where Pierce Brosnan was not actually Pierce Brosnan would have taken over in '87 with Living Daylights. The series probably still would have ended after '89 because of financial issue. So would Sam Neill have been popular enough to still have movies that would have been...
So he could have been a one-off.
He could have been a one-off.
Yeah.
He could have been a two-off. He could have been a... he may have only made 3. Pierce Brosnan still would have probably come back around in the mid-'90s.
Yeah.
The only reason why Pierce Brosnan was not Bond before the mid-'90s was because of Remington Steele.
Remington Steele, yeah.
Although Timothy Dalton almost won the part over Roger Moore.
Huh, wow.
He was a friend of the Broccoli family.
Weird.
So, he had acting chops that they were looking for, but decided he was too young in 1973, which is the right choice. I mean, it was right not to go with him. He was too young.
It was too young. So that was your Bond lesson.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I know a lot about Bond, too. So you heard me talk a lot about the monkeys. You heard me talk a lot about, Bond.
Objectivism.
Man, we've
James
got...
Bond. This episode is jam-packed.
It is. And we had tentacle monsters.
We did.
We're going to be a big hit in Japan.
So we've got obviously a lot more ground to cover on Carpenter.
Yes, I mean, we talked about Halloween, but we talked about more Halloween. Every movie of Carpenter's is a little bit different.
They all though play on psychological horror, and for the most part, and
or societal fear.
It's societal fear, or even just an element of well, yeah, I mean, and with that, generally a little bit of political theory. He likes to throw a little bit of political theory and philosophy into his movies.
Sure.
It's there. I mean,
it's there.
He's a super intelligent dude, and he kind of writes with that sort of alarm bell mentality of satire. It's like, look, I'm making a fun, goofy movie, but it's a reflection of some of the things I'm worried about.
Sure.
And reality, right? Which is, in my opinion, the best horror.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, in the future, we're going to talk more about John Carpenter, whether it's They Live or Prince of Darkness.
Prince of Darkness. That's one that I think pairs really well with Mouth of Madness as well.
Absolutely.
That would be a hell of a double feature.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a Carpenter double feature.
I love Escape from New York.
Yep.
Escape from LA is bad, but I'm learning to appreciate it in a different way now because I think it was meant to be that way. But that could be revisionist history too.
And Escape from New York is a little. The farther we get away from that one, the more dated that one feels for me. And I don't really like how it's shot. It's really dark. It's hard to see. The blacks are really hard to distinguish. It's just a difficult movie to watch visually, from an aesthetic standpoint. I mean,
but
I love
it also makes sense though because New York is shut down.
But I want to see what the fuck's happening.
Right? Yeah. Sure. Fair
so
enough,
I need to maybe adjust my color on my screen or something next time I watch that movie. But last time I watched it, I remember being like really disappointed and not really being able to see what was happening. I don't know.
Well,
but anyway.
Yeah.
And then, I think at some point, if we really wanted to do Carpenter right, we could dedicate an entire episode to sort of third act Carpenter, like stuff like Ghost of Mars, Vampires. Like, it's not good. It's not, but it's still Carpenter, and there's things to talk about. And
man, it's we talked about fandom.
Yeah,
it's okay to say you don't like something within something you like. It's okay for you to say that you don't like a Carpenter movie and still be a Carpenter fan.
I know, but I find it interesting to talk about. I think it's interesting to talk about the bad movies
Sure.
that a director that I love has made. I think
Sure.
in some ways that's even more fun.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, we'll think about that one in the future. So I think we got a pretty good. Pretty good place here.
Pretty good. I think you should go watch this movie if you haven't seen it.
Definitely, it's a good one. It's probably his last great one.
Yeah.
Where can people find us?
Oh my goodness! All right, Film Seizure everything. So go to Film Seizure on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You'll find us. I think we're even on the Tumblr.
Mm-hmm.
You can get us by email, by emailing filmseizure@gmail.com. That will get into our inbox, and we will send you an old-fashioned typed-out email response. And then and then you can print it out and put it on your wall and be like, "Oh my god, I got an email from those guys."
Yeah.
Obviously, you can find us at filmseizure.com, which is where our home base resides. This is where maybe you found this episode. But we also have all of our things hosted on SoundCloud. So if you like the SoundCloud experience and just want to go there directly, we have a page there as well.
Yeah, you can follow us there, and you can be notified when new episodes.
Absolutely, please follow us.
Or you can also follow the web. The webpage has a way to follow people. So
and if you have comments for us, you can comment on the website.
Absolutely.
You can comment on SoundCloud. Please tell us what you think.
Yes. Also, you can find some stuff that I do over at bmovieenema.com.
Yes, indeed.
bmovieenema also has a Facebook and a Twitter. You know what? You can also find me. Jeff's Ramblings is my Twitter.
Do you have a Jeff Ramblings
Twitter? I've had it for years, and I never really do much with it. Jeff spelled Geoff. S and then Ramblings, all one word. You can find me there. So
he will ramble.
Hey
there, ramblers! Let's get rambling.
Yeah, at times I have rambled, like right now. So anyway,
what do we got next week?
Next week we have Demolition Man. We talked a little bit about that. How expect a debate.
We're
over
going
capital
to debate
punishment.
the issues on the next episode of Film Seizure.
Of an early '90s Sly Stallone movie during the fear that the liberals were going to change everything into kimono wearing weirdos. Whatever. It never happened, people. We've taken swings at it. We tried with Obama.
I only have 2 words for this movie. 3 seashells.
Is seashells one word?
It's 1 word.
Okay, it is now. 3 seashells. 2 words.
2 words, 3 seashells.
I know how the seashells work. I would not do it though. But I know the explanation. We'll talk about next week.
Oh my goodness. Well, there's your hook.
Tease.
There's your hook. Come in next week and find out how the 3 seashells actually are supposed to work.
And find out why I think capital punishment is a good thing.
Indeed. I will argue that point, and it will be such merriment.
It's going to be good. It's going to be good. So, anyway, we will see you next week. My name is Jeff Arbuckle.
My name is Jason Oliver, and you have been listening to Film Seizure.
Do you read Sutter Cane?